And along with Lamar, there's a lot of other top potential franchise tag candidates, and here they are listed out. A lot of running backs there: Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, also Tony Pollard with the Cowboys, Evan Ingram on the board. But of course, the main question marks are going to be surrounding the quarterback out of Baltimore right now, Lamar Jackson. And we have Pete Prisco and Charles Davis joining us here on CBS Sports HQ as the NFL franchise tag window opens today. And of course, the biggest question, what everyone is going to be talking about, is Lamar Jackson. Guys, are we almost certainly looking at the tag for Lamar? Pete, we'll start with you.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about that. Look, these negotiations have been tough, and talking to people in Baltimore, it's a hard negotiation because you're negotiating against the kid yourself. That means you're looking him in the eye and saying, no, you're not worth that, you're worth this. And anybody who's doing the negotiating for yourself is going to take that as an insult no matter what you say. So it's a tough negotiation. So they have to give him the franchise tag. He wants a contract that's going to be guaranteed like Deshaun Watson. They're not doing that. In fact, I will find it highly unlikely that any team in the league will do that. So many owners were angry about the guaranteed contract. So what do? If I'm the Ravens, I put the non-exclusive franchise tag on him. Here's why. If you don't want to do the negotiating, let somebody else do it for you. And if they do it, then you can match it. If they do something that's outrageous, like fully guaranteed contract, you let them walk, you get 2 first-round picks. So I would do the non-exclusive tag if I were the GM of the Ravens, Eric DeCosta, but we'll see how that plays out.
Pete, I think that you are really onto something here, and I think that it's a really tough dance for the Ravens because they love how they've run offense with Lamar Jackson. They love what he's given them. They love how the team has an identity on offense. And let's go all the way back to before they drafted him. And I want to give John Harbaugh, their head coach, a lot of credit here. He tasked his staff prior to the draft with coming up with a plan on if we draft Lamar Jackson, what will we do offensively? So they had thoughts in mind. This wasn't something that dropped out of the sky and then they created as they went along. They knew where they wanted to go with him, and they've gotten there. Now, obviously, it ran its course with Greg Roman for whatever reasons there. Now they're going to, Todd Monken's going to come in, and he knows how to change offenses for different quarterbacks. He just did it with a national championship with Stetson Bennett. But all that being said, if you're Baltimore, you have not had the success you want at playoff time. You haven't rung the bell throwing the football. They're still struggling to have a full throwing game that doesn't involve Mark Andrews at the tail end of most throws. I don't see how you do anything but tag, and then you just go from there. I really feel like the window for Lamar Jackson and his crew in getting this done was probably 2 years ago, where he could have gotten it done and been in a much better position. Right now, with their lack of playoff success, with the lack of throwing the football success, I think his position has gotten a little more tenuous in terms of that. Plus, as Pete will tell you, you got to be able to finish the season with your quarterback. In the last 2 years, he hadn't been able to finish it, and it's hurt their record at the end of the year.
All eyes certainly going to be on Lamar in the offseason. But let's talk about the Bills. They have 2 options for potential franchise tag player, Jordan Poyer and then Trumaine Edmonds. Charles, who do you think is more likely to get the tag between those 2 guys?
I'd say more likely to get the tag is probably Jordan Poyer because of how he plays in the back end with Micah Hyde and the success that they have. The sad part is Damar Hamlin had stepped in and played pretty well. Jaquan Johnson had stepped in and played well when those 2 were out. And in fact, I talked with a coach getting ready for Buffalo and said, hey, what have you learned along the way, from getting ready for this game? And he said, what I've learned is those backup safeties are pretty darn good. But now those backup safeties aren't the same, unfortunately, because of what happened with Damar. Hyde and Poyer, the best tandem you have going, go ahead and do something. Remember, Matt Milano's moved in as the linebacker in Buffalo. Now, all this could change a little bit if Josh Allen's contract gets restructured, Jacqueline and Pete. And remember, he has a monster cap hit there. And he feels to me, and I never mess with anyone else's money. I say, Pete, I don't do domestic. I also don't do anyone's money either. But we've seen these top quarterbacks do things with their contracts in order to make their team better. Josh Allen would be a likely candidate for restructuring in order to free up money to have them make that big run again, because this year ended not because they weren't talented enough, But I think other things came into play that kept Buffalo from getting there.
Yeah, and a team that the Bills know all too well, the Chiefs and Orlando Brown Jr. According to reports, he rejected a 6-year, $139 million contract from KC before the season started. Pete, should the Chiefs tag him for a second straight year?
Yes, they should. And here's why. I mean, look, he wants, obviously, you look at that number, he wants $25 million a year. They're not going to give him that. And if they tag him again, it's $18 million. So you get a bargain. And you have him for 2 years, essentially for, $35 million a year, which is far less than what he was looking for. Is he a great left tackle? No. Is he a good one? Yes. And he's a big part of what they do on that offensive line. And we saw that offensive line play really well in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. So I think they tag him again, keep that line intact. Remember, right tackle Andrew Wiley is also an unrestricted free agent, so he's probably going to go elsewhere. But I think when you look at this group, you'd like to keep as much of it together as possible. And I think Brown getting tagged makes all the sense in the world for the Chiefs.
And Pete, going into the Super Bowl, we did discuss the Kansas City's offensive line at the tackle position might be the issue in the ball game. Orlando Brown and Andrew Wiley, could they slow down those elite pass rushers? Well, the Eagles will tell you the field slowed them down, right? So that's going to be part of the issue. But they did it, right? The record shows, and they put it on a T-shirt. But I would not do anything but tag Orlando Brown. I think he is a good left tackle. I think he's an elite right tackle. And he's getting away with playing left tackle, which he's always wanted to do because Kansas City does some things on offense. Patrick Mahomes back there moves around well, etc. But is he an elite left tackle? Not in my mind. In my mind, he's an elite right tackle. That's where he belongs, and that's where he could really make his mark. But you know how it works, Pete. Guys want to be a left tackle, just like when we were little boys, we wanted to be quarterbacks. So I totally get that part of it, but I would tag him. I wouldn't pay him the elite money there for the left tackle position, no.
And the Eagles, coming off of their Super Bowl run, they also have 20 free agents that they have to deal with now in the offseason. Charles, what are the chances that the Eagles tag one of those guys, and who would it be in your opinion?
Well, look at that list you put up, Jacqueline. I mean, that is quite the list, isn't it? And some of these guys have proven themselves. I think that, Kaiser White, I think, came in on a one-year deal, and he probably outplayed that. But if you're going to ask me to do it, I'm Javon Hargrave. I mean, that big defensive tackle. I think Fletcher Cox is not a guy that you're going to tag. You're going to see if you can get him on the cheap later. He's going to have to explore elsewhere. But Hargrave, because remember, the guys they brought in behind him are Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph. You're not going to tag them, not where they are. You brought them in to try and win a championship. And again, if you're bringing them back, you're trying to go cheap on it. Bradbury, if they can, but he's looking for elite money out there at the opposite corner.
Yeah, he's not the guy. I think you're spot on. Hargrave should be the guy. It just depends on where that money goes. If you try and get him locked up in a long-term deal, I know a one-year deal. If you franchise tag him, it's $18 million. Whereas if you franchise tag Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who was a big part of what they did on defense this year, it's $14 million. So I think it comes down to one of those two guys. I think ultimately I would make sure Hargrave was there. Jordan Davis didn't play like Jordan Davis after he came back from his injury. Those other guys are getting up in the years. Fletcher Cox is probably gone unless he takes a minimum deal with the Eagles. So Hargrave makes the most sense for me as well if you want to tag somebody.
All right, and talking about running back, we showed the list at the top of this segment. There's a number of them there for the franchise tag candidates. Most notable ones, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs. Pete, which one do you think is more likely to get tagged out of those two guys?
Well, I think Barkley would be the choice, but here's the problem. What are they going to do with Daniel Jones? I think they're hand in hand. If you were to put the tag on Daniel Jones, if you can't get a deal done with him, then I think Barkley obviously will get onto the market or at least get a long-term deal. So I think Jacobs is the easier one. They don't have a lot of guys that are possible in terms of tagging, and they, declined his fifth-year option. That was going to pay $8 million. He goes out and has a great season. The tag's only $10 million or so. So I think that's great value for them. So I think Josh Jacobs will be the one that gets tagged.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed, Pete. The logic that you just laid out there is dead on, because now if you're able to tag Jacobs, if you're Las Vegas, you've gotten yourself a bargain considering what he did last season. and the chance to go on and do it again. Because now what you bring back into play is his first 2 years in the season. In the league, excuse me, when he played really well and he was looking to be the star before a little bit of a dip in production. And of course, the team had that as well a little bit. Now, put it all together, he's that guy, because when you go back to Barkley, and you mentioned Daniel Jones being a part of it, he's changed agents, they're going to try and get something done. Both of those guys are long-term plan deals. And with the Giants, I know we were talking about Barkley and the money being a little bit far apart right now. Saquon Barkley wants to be a Giant. New Jersey kid, went to Penn State, playing for the first team that drafted him despite all the noise. Everyone screamed about Dave Gettleman taking him. Dave Gettleman told me he has Hall of Fame talent, and you draft Hall of Fame talent. I don't think anyone's going to argue that he doesn't have Hall of Fame talent. And then again, after last season, what he did carrying that team to the playoffs, yeah, absolutely. One of them will get tagged, as you noted, Pete. You're right. But let's face it. To me, you tag Jacobs right after Las Vegas.
You know, I'll be honest with you. I'm not giving any running back on a second deal a long-term mega deal. I'm just not. I think those days are gone. They're over with. If you're a running back and you have a good 4-year run and it's time to tag you, I'll tag you for a year and see what you could do. And I go back to all those big deals. Look at all those big deals that were given out over the years. You know, even the Melvin Gordon got a big deal. You know, Zeke Elliott. There's nothing back for the return on those. So I think the days of the mega deals for the running back are over, and I think the franchise tag makes a ton of sense for any running back who is ready to become available that you want to keep.
Hey Pete, Pete, when you woke up, did you startle in the middle of the night and all of a sudden go, Todd Gurley? Is that what happened? Is that why we're Todd Gurley?
There's another one. They're across the board, all of them. Remember, David Johnson got a mega deal from the Cardinals. David Johnson got a mega deal from the Cardinals, and it didn't work out. You don't give these guys the second contract mega deals.
Your evidence is right along the line about why people don't do it, and it starts with, do you draft the running back high to begin with, Jacqueline? That's one of the arguments people have. If you're lucky, you can get it out of the first one, but as Pete has pointed out, the track record of the second contract has not been quite as successful.
Yeah, and Pete, you mentioned Zeke. It's going to be interesting to see what the Cowboys do with the Tony Pollard, Zeke situation for them as well. But moving on from running backs, going over to tight ends, Evan Ingram, he's having a career year, or had one in Jacksonville. And then speaking of Dallas, we got Dalton Schultz. Pete, if you're the Jags and the Cowboys, if you're in their front office, what do you do with these guys? We'll start off with the Jags.
Did we lose Pete there for a second, Jacqueline?
Yeah, I think we lost. I think we lost Pete.
Listen, I can't be Pete. He's got the knowledge, and he's also got the shovel to bury people. I don't have either one of those, but I'll try and jump in and help out a little bit. For me, tight ends right now, the ones that are coming out of college, Jacqueline, it has become that position that has become more and more of use and more and more attractive in how they're utilizing these guys in the NFL. This is a tight end rich draft coming up. We've got a kid who's at Georgia by the name of Brock Bowers, who's setting the standard for tight end in college football right now. And more people are going to be like them. So if you're talking about, putting big money into your tight end position, Evan Ingram, this was his first big season with Jacksonville after he'd been a disappointment in New York. I'm not sure you're rewarding him long-term for that one. And if you're Dallas, Dalton Schultz has really come on. And remember, he was a 4th-round pick. I think tag, and off we go. And somewhere, didn't they make a movie called Tag? They might make Tag the sequel when we're talking about all these players in this year's free agent market.
All right, Charles, we're going to keep it in the NFC East. The Commanders and what they're doing with Daron Payne. Payne putting up a career-high 11.5 sacks this year. Charles, if you're the Commanders, how do you approach him?
You want him around, Jacqueline. That defensive front has been constructed over time. When you're talking about the drafts that they've had previously, where they are now, and now you're trying to get Chase Young back full time. You're talking about first-round talent, first-round guys all across the board at every spot. And now that you're bringing in Eric Bieniemy to be your offensive coordinator, you know that you're trying your best to make a big run as a team. All right, you're close before with mediocre records. You know you're going to have to jump your game up because of where Dallas and Philadelphia are now. Daron Payne's a force next to Jonathan Allen, next to Montez Sweat, next to Chase Young. You want those guys around. Do whatever you have to do. You want to work out a deal, great. But at the least, you tag him and keep him around.
I'm with you, Charles. Look, I'll give you a little hint as to what's coming with my top 100, which is going to be released on Thursday. He's in the top 5. That's how good he is. He played outstanding football last year. Now, some people will say he was in a contract year, so he played even better. I don't believe that. I think he's one of those ascending players. And if I'm Washington, there's no way in hell I'm allowing him to get on the open market. He's too good, a big part of what they do on defense.
All right, Pete Prisco and Charles Davis joining us here on CBS Sports HQ. Pete, I'm glad we got you back for the end of the segment there as the NFL franchise tag window opens today. It's already been a busy offseason, and things are just going to ramp up from here. The NFL draft also right around the corner, so make sure you check out the With the First Pick podcast with former GM Rick Spielman and our senior draft analyst Ryan Wilson. In the very latest episode, the guys are talking about some of the QBs on the board in the upcoming draft and answering some listener questions. You can download and listen wherever you get your podcast, also on the CBS Sports YouTube channel, and you can scan that QR code.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.